And as they ascend to heaven, they're going to perform their stories for you, so that you understand the good deeds that saved their soul. The one who is not performing shall read, and the non-reader shall perform, because in heaven everything is cooperation.
Now introducing the coal mine story. The chewing noise echoes through the coal mine. Calvin's eyes move from his split fingers clutching the pickle over his shoulder to Rodney, chewing his gum as if he was watching a soccer game under the warm spring sunbeams. It'd be uplifting if his stupid jaw wouldn't click with each chew. They're still mining and have gotten very deep, when Rodney notices an old collapsed wing of the mine. He turns to Calvin, looking dour. Calvin brings up the death of the 10 men that were buried alive there. Rodney reflects for a moment and says, "It's the bosses ignoring regulations. The shit will chew us up and it doesn't spit us out." "Just keep chewing," Calvin tells Rodney, and turns back to the coal in front of him. Each swing is another day closer to Lillian's college degree. His little girl will do what he never had the chance to, get out of this forsaken town and study somewhere with a library that didn't have to also function as a shelter. He'd barely made any progress when he gets interrupted once more. From his pocket this time, the radio on his belt starts buzzing. "Rodney, can you get that?" But the lazy butt was taking his third break already. Calvin puts down his pickaxe and answers. It's the voice of a little girl. His little girl. Daddy, something really bad is going on." "Lillian? What are you doing at the mine?" Calvin gets to the top of the mine to find his daughter. She's crying and holding her broken teddy bear. Calvin gives her a big hug. Don't worry, I'll fix Barry at home." "Want to come down into the mine with me and Uncle Rodney to find some fool's gold?" She nods and they descend into the mine. When they reach Rodney, he sounds like he's still chewing. He turns around and he isn't. They look back at the shaft and a man chewing on a stick of dynamite enters. His terrified wide eyes look at the three when his mouth cracks open and he swallows the stick. He explodes, collapsing the mine, trapping the three. Lillian starts crying immediately. Rodney lifts her up and yells at Calvin to run, eager to find the illusion of safety in these dark, twisted shafts. Calvin is frozen, staring after Rodney. The image fades into a flashback. An old argument Calvin hates thinking back on. "What do you mean you convinced her to keep it? My sister's got a scholarship. Do you even know how to care for a child?" He said he did. He didn't. He said their precious Annabelle would be okay. She wasn't. She wanted to start a family, sure, not yet. Not before finishing law school, but at some point. Her brother was just overprotective. It was sudden, but she had a few lucid moments between Lillian's birth and her death. Enough to tell Rodney and him to get the fuck over their fight and care for the baby together. With everything Calvin had fucked up, he was at least certain he could be a good dad. A great dad. A dad that wouldn't bring his daughter into a dangerous mine. Rodney's call snapped him back into the present. "Calvin, get moving!" Calvin catches up with Rodney and starts strategizing. He's been a summer camp counselor before. He knows how to plan things. And it's important that he comes up with a rescue plan. The boss would think of Rodney as a good employee and it wouldn't be fair. Provided, of course, they all make it alive out of here. Which they will, thanks to him. Calvin tells them they need to get into the wider parts of the mine, where oxygen will last longer and rescue troops are more likely to find them. There's another lift on the north side of the mines that goes up to the mountain. If they keep a swift step, they could get there in about 4 hours. Lillian is crying throughout all of it. Rodney tries to translate Calvin's instructions into child-friendly explanations, but it's better if she doesn't understand. Rodney also takes Calvin aside and asks him what he thinks about the dislocated jaw and the dynamite. Calvin hesitates. He doesn't know what to make of it. He doesn't know how to deal with it. But for Annabelle's and Lillian's sake, he will deal with this situation. So he tells Rodney that he has no idea what he's talking about. "The explosion must have messed with your head, Rod." Timothy takes another drag of his cigarette as he listens to the coal mine owner's weak attempts at bullshitting him. He knows the regulations are only for show, knows the accident was completely preventable. His boss briefed him on the details before he left London to discuss the acquisition of this rundown American mine. Timothy hadn't asked his boss if he intended to fix safety issues after taking over ownership. He hadn't felt any particular way about it. That's a moral issue, he's aware of that. But the truth is, he couldn't bring himself to feel much about anything anymore. So what if he'd become a loyal servant to the man? At least it kept him comfortable without effort. There was London Timothy. There was Timothy before he'd run into Rodney. He suddenly had a lot of feelings, more feelings than he knew how to handle. He knows the mine owner is bullshitting him, and he's feeling damn strongly about the idea of risking workers' lives now. So anyway, I don't believe your discount proposal in regards to necessary renovations is appropriate. You don't need to renovate anything after taking over. The owner leads Timothy out of his office and up to the viewing area. I beg to differ, my dear gentleman, but an explosion cuts Timothy off. The mine goes up in flames, and Timothy's feelings, way too many of them, go up with it. Rodney starts coughing after a few minutes, and Calvin silently curses him for it. It made Lillian think she has to cough too, and now she can't stop. Calvin bounces her in his arms, trying to calm her down, but her coughing only intensifies. Let's stop, Rodney says, still breathing himself. We must have made 5 miles already, and Lillian needs a moment. She needs a moment of fresh air is what she needs. Fresh air what she'll get when we're up there. He tries to push on, but Lillian shakes her head. No, Daddy, now. Calvin sighs and sets her down. He's a good dad. He listens to her. Rodney gives her the last sip of his water and starts telling her a story about the tiny coal pixies that live between stones. Lillian gets really intrigued by his stories, and they search the area for the pixies with their random tickle attacks. She stops coughing after a few minutes and starts giggling. Calvin watches for a moment with his arms crossed. If they want to rest, they should rest and not search for stupid pixies. Then he stands up and kicks a few loose-seeming stones to discover a possible path upwards. A sharp edge catches his thigh, leaving a long gash. He gives up the search and tells the others to keep moving. The leg hurts like hell, but Calvin isn't showing it. Not after Rodney showed him up like that, making her laugh while the world around them is crumbling. It was an irresponsible thing to do, and Calvin knew it. He knew it wasn't his jealousy that led him, but his good judgment. At least they're walking again now. The air is getting thinner in the shaft. Rodney has started coughing again. Daddy, why is the ground so see-through? Calvin doesn't answer and picks her up instead. She doesn't need to know about the deeper mine, the accident that happened there years ago, his company's poor cover-up. The planks underneath them almost seem like flooring. She should just accept them as such. Rodney is probably going to tell her that it's see-through because her daddy makes bad choices, but he'll show Rodney. He speeds up and the three make their way over the precarious planked floor until they reach a crossing. Rodney heads towards the right shaft without even slowing down. He reminds Calvin that it leads to the underground break room. Calvin hesitates because he believes the left way could lead upwards. He's not sure, but he really doesn't want to go with Rodney's option. They get into an argument and Rodney tries to take Lillian from his arms. Calvin runs with her down the left path instead. After a while, Calvin looks over his shoulder to check if Rodney is still chasing them. Lillian screams, but it's too late. He stumbles over a rock and they tumble down a half-planked hole. It takes Calvin a moment to regain consciousness. Then he hears, Daddy, Daddy, my jaw hurts. Calvin sits up, taking a moment to orient himself. It'll be fine, Lillian, he mumbles as the colors around him slowly attach back to their appropriate objects. They fell into the underbelly of the mine, not too steep, but he's uncertain how to find his way out of it now. Daddy, you never truly listen, do you? It was a strange thing for Lillian to say, and even stranger, she sucked her teeth with each word. He rubbed his eyes and turned to her. Are you injured? The horrible sight in front of him cuts off his words. Lillian's eyes are wide, scared, but her mouth tells a different story. Her jaw is unlocked, gaping wide open. Her lips twitch around the bizarrely large opening, fletching her teeth in a rhythm. What? He was never going to finish that sentence. not with the throat the 6-year-old ripped out of him. Calvin gargles just long enough to comprehend that his precious daughter has torn him apart. Then he falls to the ground lifeless. Lillian howls, half conscious of the tragedy, half devoured by hunger. "Lillian, are you down there?" She howls once more. "Don't worry, Uncle Rodney's coming," a doomed voice yells from above her. Timothy breaks through the blockage, descending into the mine caked in dirt, wielding a pickaxe. He's never done this before, being a hero and all, like James Bond, but without Bond girls, or permission to kill, or real weapons, or it's just stone. He can handle stone without being James Bond. It takes him an hour and people won't stop shouting behind him. He's supposed to wait for the rescue teams, but screw that. For once there's excitement in him. Thrill, danger, something to fight for. No matter what his boarding school principal said, there's some fight in him. He finally unearthed the old supply lift, and to his relief it still functions. He studied the mine's plans for more Saturday nights than he cares to admit. Its construction is immortalized in his brain, right next to his high school sweetheart's phone number. That asshole. The supply lift takes a nerve-wrackingly long time to travel below, but when it does, he hears Rodney right away. "Don't worry, Uncle Rodney's coming!" "Rodney, wait!" Timothy yells as he struggles his way out of the lift. Rodney stops his descent deeper into the depths. If the girl is really down there, she's probably dead. Timothy's heart stops. He has zero grief counseling experience. Rodney holds himself off the edge. "Timothy, how? No, you were safe. The stuffy office." Timothy chuckles with teary eyes. "You were right. The stuffy office couldn't hold my attention in the end." He runs to the edge and takes Rodney's hand, ready to pull him back up. "No, my knees!" A monstrosity jumps on Rodney's back before he can finish a sentence. The outline fits a girl's body, but all her features are contorted and her razor blade-filled jaw has unhooked itself. It expands wide enough to devour a man whole, leaving no trace to mourn over. That's exactly what she's about to do with Rodney. Timothy raises his pickaxe and the girl looks up. It's Lillian. It's definitely fucking Lillian. The person who matters the most to Rodney. If he kills her, they're done. Timothy can retreat back to London and start his lonely child murderer existence. But he needs Rodney. He couldn't kill his niece. There must be another way. The pickaxe finds her eye before he can finish the thought. His foolish, scared, not James Bond at all body has acted before his mind caught up. "Lillian!" Rodney yells, but it's too late. Rodney grabs Timothy by the shirt collar and swings him over the pit and shouts. The world becomes noise, nothing but noise. 15 TV shows blaring those terrible action flicks at once, and Timothy can't find the off button. Rodney yells, there's howling, stones crashing, bones cracking, until one sound remains, the sucking of teeth. Timothy rolls himself up from the ground, adrenaline hiding the pain. His right arm isn't obeying, likely due to the bizarre angle it finds itself in. He looks away, determined to keep his stomach from emptying itself. "Rodney!" he coughs, and looks at his love on the ground. The broken, lifeless body of Lillian is beside him. He has to find words to make this okay. If not okay, then bearable, survivable. He has to find them fast. Rodney convulses. It looks like he's lost the fight with his stomach. Timothy can't blame him. The sight of his arm combined with the grotesque corpse of one's precious baby. He doesn't have anyone to compare the pain to. His prestigious rug back in London means the world to him, but he doubts it comes close. Rodney could have. Rodney would have. Fuck, he has to fix this. "I'm so sorry, she was Rodney?" His love is looking up. Grief was expected. Hate would have been appropriate. Greed hadn't been a consideration. Yet there was his Rodney, hungry greed in his eyes, and a jaw wide enough to swallow everything Timothy ever was and everything he could have been. Timothy needed to save Rodney. There was no world where he didn't save Rodney. Against better judgment of any kind, Timothy stumbles closer to Rodney. "Hey, Rodney?" There's a plea in Rodney's eyes. A glimmer of humanity, enough to give hope, not sufficient to prevent the inevitable. Rodney leaps forward and locks his teeth in Timothy's neck. The pain reaches absurd levels, the kind of sensation you cry over while watching it with detached wonder. Blood is flowing, his blood, and any second now it might be over, but it couldn't be, because that's not the damn stories Timothy is telling. That's not how Rodney survives. Rodney! Timothy screams, his hands wandering over the floor, desperate for something useful. The teeth loosen for a second, and a brave silence defying "Sorry" makes its way out of Rodney's mouth. It's enough to put some strength back into Timothy. His hands find an object, grossly fleshy, but he doesn't trust his senses to deliver accurate information right now. He lifts it and shoves it against Rodney. Timothy falls backwards. When he looks back up, he sees that it worked. The monster inside of Rodney is distracted by that weird, fleshy, oh god, it's his brother-in-law, Calvin. Rodney is devouring Calvin. Timothy wonders for a second what circumstances could make him okay with that fact. Then he decides these circumstances will do. He jumps back up and runs deeper into the undermine, searching for help. His spirit ahead, his blood trailing behind. Rodney will not die like this! In the distance there is a light, but not a natural light. It pulses, beckoning Timothy closer. It could be an illusion, a mirage. He wasn't sure whether he cared if the rescue was true or fake as long as it provided peace. After 5 dreadfully long minutes, he reaches it and finds a small glowing chest like TV pirates would use for a treasure. It's not a map he finds, but a note, scratched in the same ink now pouring from his neck. The hunger shall not stop until it devours its origin, Abbott's soul for hours. Timothy reads it over and starts laughing. It seems like he had more to discuss with the mine owner after all. He pictures calling his boss in London and telling him that the mine worker's curse chomped his business partner. What a pleasing picture. What a lovely story. Timothy doesn't notice how his knees give in. He hits the ground still laughing, but it's turning into terror as stars set in. He's losing consciousness. A growling next to him stirs him awake. Rodney, his jaw still biting down on an arm. It looked too small to be Calvin's, but Timothy refuses to finish the thought. Rodney growls again. Hey there, Timothy stammers. This was the moment to decide if he was James Bond or the idiot victim number 4. I know, Abbott. Let me take you to him, please. Rodney's eyes widen. He drops the arm and shakes heavily. It looks like he's going to throw up. Instead, the accumulation of 100 screaming spirits leave his mouth in a blood-red smoke cloud. The crying ghost of Lillian dances in the air for a second. There was no saving her. The smoke travels into the treasure chest, and Timothy closes it immediately. He knows locking them in there isn't enough. It would never be. Rodney collapses, sobbing on the ground before him. Rodbear, let's go get revenge. Timothy and Rodney clutch the same rescue rope, raising them out of the darkness, a chest in hand. Rodney's tanned skin has turned grey, and he stares at a world he no longer understands. Timothy has his arm around him. His arm could help. His arm and 5 years of therapy. Mr. Abbott awaits them on the surface with a camera team already announcing the successful rescue mission. 2 paramedics rush at Timothy and Rodney when they emerge. He lets one take Rodney to the ambulance and hopes they give him one of those blankets. Those blankets are supposed to work even better than his arm. The other paramedic tries to patch up Timothy's bleeding neck, a horrified look on the young woman's face. Timothy ignores her nudges and turns to Abbott instead. Timothy, good lad, our hero from Britain. Abbott, what do you have to say for the countless lives lost in a mining accident 5 years ago? Was it good for profit? Timothy tries really hard to sound cool, but he's wheezing at this point. Abbott's face drops nonetheless. The reporters focus on him right away. I don't know what you... Timothy interrupts him. Anyone have sensitive nerves around here? One reporter looks nervous. Timothy nudges towards the ambulance. You might want to take a seat in there for now. He winks at the journalist despite his trembling knees. He's nailing this. Timothy, what? The cursed smoke of 100 furious ghosts shut Abbott's mouth up forever. They devour him to the shock of the surrounding crowd. Timothy's paramedic tries to interfere, but it's in vain. The ghosts only attack Abbott now that they've found their targets. Timothy tries to enjoy this revenge, but his stomach reminds him that he does, in fact, have sensitive nerves. He turns away and walks to the ambulance instead. Rodney is still staring at the ceiling. Timothy takes his hand, but he doesn't react. It'll all be well now, just you wait, he whispers, and hopes that he saved more of Rodney than his living, breathing body. He must have. This is not how Rodney dies.
We open on a subway train in the middle of the night. A homeless person is sleeping on a bench, and a businesswoman on the phone nearby. We hear a sucking noise as the skin pulls off the man. The woman makes a point of not looking as it closes in. The last image is the skin wrapping her up and devouring her in a bloody affair. Then the same businesswoman stands up and makes a business-sounding call. We hear a concerned voice coming from the phone, asking if Susan, the businesswoman, is all right. She grins widely, looks the homeless man up and down, and responds that she's just finished up her report. The neighborhood development was a huge success and no homeless people were left. She hangs up, snarls a "get out," and heads for the exit. Jill is walking through New York. She is a street artist with a Patreon. She tags an anti-capitalist message on the intro to the subway as she descends, takes a pic and posts it to Instagram for her followers. New York is grungy and gritty but alive with protest. She's taking the subway to one at the moment. When she gets there, she meets her non-binary partner Solitaire and tells them about her latest post. After the protest, they take the subway again and get back to the warehouse apartment they share with 5 other queer, neurodivergent 20-somethings. Mark and his boyfriend John, Brenda, Erica, and Jacqueline, a polythrouple. The night unfolds like any other. John cooks a strange carbapalooza of biscuits, spaghetti, and pad thai for the lot. Erica works late, her head stuck in politics that may one day create a juster world. Jacqueline beats Mark at chess for the 18th time that week, and Solitaire practices their inking skills with a new tap on Jill's wrist. John has just sat down to eat as well when Erica slams her laptop down and snarls, "Get out!" Jacqueline and Brenda laughed. John asks if his cooking is that bad tonight, but Erica's expression stays icy. "Get out! You don't have the permits to occupy these buildings. I just messaged my boss. The police is on the way." The laughter dies down. Jacqueline clears her throat. "Boo, you're kidding, right? I mean..." The sound of sirens cuts her off. "Fuck all that!" Solitaire yells, grabs their go bag. Jill runs over to Solitaire and starts to argue about leaving, while Baxter, their dog, is still at the groomer. As they argue, Brenda grabs Jacqueline, shaking her. "Why would you do this, Erica? You're kidding, right?" Erica's skin begins ripping free and wrapping around Brenda's arms. Mark is sobbing and vomits while he watches. John pulls a pistol and baseball bat from under the counter. He fires a round into Jacqueline. Everyone screams. Inside of a shattered skull, her head splits open. Instead of a shattered skull, her head splits open. Grinding teeth are inside. We see the real Jacqueline screaming in torturous pain inside the creature. Jill just barely drags Erica away from Brenda as they disappear down a hatch that leads into the subway. Under the hole, they find themselves in a sewer, running. Their apartment had a direct runoff vent that they used to joke was their escape hatch. It wasn't a joke anymore. As they run through the hatch, Jill keeps dragging Jacqueline, who is sobbing and confused. They run through and through the sewers, hope to escape. A circle brings them around to a manhole where they find Brenda standing. She's dressed like a high-class escort. "Get out," she moans at them. Jacqueline freezes as Brenda marches over. Brenda closes in on Jacqueline.
Jacqueline reaches to stroke her face. Brenda splits down the middle, opening like a giant mouth, revealing the suffering real Brenda inside, fused into the beast. Before it can eat Jacqueline, John pushes her out of the way and fires 4 rounds into the real Brenda, putting her out of her misery. As Brenda dies, the creature rocks away around her corpse, leaving the maimed body on the floor. Goodbye, Brenda. I'm sorry. The streets of New York are in chaos. It's going to be the first city to fall. There are flesh creatures around in the streets, devouring and replacing people. We see a former gangster standing side by side with a rival gang member, Jerome and Jorge. They are fighting off a wave of possessed flesh cops. Once the authorities, Wall Street, CEOs, and the governing staff of New York had revealed their monstrous form, it was a no-brainer who had kept them at war with each other. Sure as the possessed clan members they had fought 10 minutes ago, they were fighting together to secure the west side of the Brooklyn Bridge. The disenfranchised had set up a refugee camp on the bridge, and thanks to local gangs and activists, they had all kept themselves safe. But for how long could they hold out? We watch from the monster's perspective as it moves, lithe like a panther, unnaturally smooth. We cut to Erica inside the mouth. We hear her bones breaking as the creature moves. She screams in pain, the teeth eating her, absorbing her. A portal opens in front of her eyes. It is an endless black void. A voice calls to her sing-song. Why does the world just hate my friend? We should be marching hand in hand. Why are the ocean levels rising up? Was it not better in 1890? Bring back the old world once again. She seems hypnotized, and suddenly she gets flushed into the hole, and she nods yes to escape the pain. We see Erica's body from the front as it hunches over and her head splits open like an egg sac, spitting out Erica in a powerful suit. She grins wide and we see her skin ripple around her. She's become a new monster. The old one reforms into the homeless man. The gang stands ankle deep in sewage. They have been unable to escape the monster's pursuit in the sewer pipe that they escaped down. It's filthy and stinks. They finally came upon a runoff vent that leads into the subway. They can hear gnashing teeth and skin echo through the sewers. It sounds as if it might have doubled since they last heard it. Sirens also vaguely can be heard above, showing they can't go up yet. John and Mark tear at the grate, fighting to rip it free. Finally, John has had enough and he fires his last bullet into the lock, breaking it free. They are out of ammo, but hopefully free. It had taken 4 shots to put down Brenda. Now they had no idea how to handle Erica. We go back to the main party as they are running through the abandoned subway section they escaped into. Solitaire and John are breathing hard, not much of runners, while the rest of the group argues. They had escaped, but they didn't know what to do. They didn't have anyone to get back to. A group of outcasts bonding over mutual abandonment. Jill sits on the old tracks and starts crying. Solitaire grabs their shoulder and tells them, "It will be all right. They had all come out of deeper trouble." We see the homeless man climb onto an abandoned subway train. The group stop arguing as they hear Erica sing, "Why does the world just hate my friends? Let's start marching hand in hand." Mark runs towards her. Jill hears the sound of an oncoming train. Brenda shrieks at Mark and John to get down. John begging Mark to stop, running towards Erica as the train gets closer. Jill and the others roll into the safety divot to go under the train. At the last second, Erica's form ripples and presses flat to the wall. Solitaire tackles John into the divot and Mark gets splattered by the train. It passes and the homeless man gets out at the next station. Mark is screaming, broken on the ground. Erica sucks him in and the skin ripples as she becomes him. His screaming form briefly seen and heard under the skin. John's face goes white as he reaches for the thing he swore he'd never use. He pulls out a satellite phone that he had never told anyone he carried. It had a direct line to his estranged father, President Trump. The phone rang and rang. They all ran away from the following Deadpedermis as it chases them. Finally, his dad answers. John explains that they're being chased by a monster and he needs the Secret Service to help. Trump responds with a chuckle. "No, I made a deal with the devil. These Deadpedermis are gonna get rid of the vermin and fix the economy with free labor. Take that, China virus. Boom. Oh, and I knew they would eat my pansy gay son. Ha! You're fired. Say goodbye to the swamp. Father, I will find the last fucking journalist alive and make sure everyone knows your secret. His father laughs on the other side of the call. Yeah, fake news, boyo, and hangs up. John grabs Jill by the wrist, pulling her in close. You have the most fucking followers of any of us, and you will help me destroy my father for causing all this. She is confused, but nods in agreement. They keep running, when suddenly they see the homeless man in front of them. As they turn to run back to a side passage, they see Mark and Erica behind them. They seem pinned in. Solitaire grabs Jill, gives her a kiss. I am so sorry. I cheated on you with Jacqueline. Jill laughs at Solitaire about this. Silly, I know you two were hooking up. I was waiting for you to tell me. Jacqueline looks really worried and Solitaire confused. You two are cute together, and I know you weren't trying to hurt me. I'm happy with Polly stuff. They cry, and all three of them hug as the monsters close in. Unbeknownst to them, John has been fiddling with a side door and rips it open. Let's go, girls! Solitaire smiles at Jill and shares a look with Jacqueline. Let's hope we live then. Solitaire shoves Jill into Jacqueline's arms. Jacqueline tosses her through the doorway and Solitaire slams it shut. Make sure everyone knows that Trump did this. I love you. We'll hold them back. They lock the door. Jill claws at the locked door, sinking into a panic she knows she can't afford. She heard sound of fighting outside, matching the rhythm of her heart. She feared they would both stop at the same time. John dragged her from the door, talking calm. They will escape the monsters, then will come for us. So, we need to escape before they do, so that we can't be a second target. He led her in search of the end of the access tunnel. After a long search with multiple jump scares, they emerge upon the hell of the street. Mexico's confirmed plague-free and sending rescue troops, a gang member yells across the street. Jerome nods and Jorge shouts, Fuck yeah! They had fought hard. They must have saved the city. They continue through the streets when they come across a lone woman looking scared. Jill stands at the head of the alleyway. She says her boyfriend is hurt. Jorge and Jerome follow her to try and help her boyfriend. As they round the corner, John is on the floor. His hand replaced by a long thread of flesh that was secretly wrapped around Jill's neck like a leash. Before they know it, Jorge is eaten and Jerome unloads his gun into John. The collar releases from Jill's neck, a needle coming free from her spine. Tears rush into her eyes as she starts bawling into Jerome's shoulder. They light the alley on fire and flee back to the bridge. The plague has transferred its goal. Jill tells the head of the camp that her friend John tried to kiss her, and when she said no, he called her a bitch, and his hand stayed on her neck before mind-controlling her. They place her in quarantine to be safe. She sees on TV from her location that DC has fallen. The president's giving a speech. Trump announces, To the Deadpedermis, you are true American. You have made us the strongest country in the world. We got the best citizens. Down with humanity. And his flesh pulsed. Jill pulls out her phone, knowing she has to report on this, and types with shaky fingers, Is there hope? We pull out slowly. The city is on fire. We see days and nights pass. Jill's text appearing on the screen. Is there hope? Of course there is. So long as we fight for what's right, we can win. When those bigger than us tell us the way things are, we can't roll over. We need to keep pushing, because while they are strong, there are more of us. You may swat 6 of us, but the 7th will stand tall, say enough, long enough, and loud enough that it stops. We will stop this. We zoom back in to see that DC is a battleground. We zoom into the Oval Office just in time to see a battle-hardened Jill kick the door open and unload a flamethrower on the president's chair, which we see from behind, implying that he is there. The end.
Vote!